The glass doors hissed open. She stepped in, quiet, plain, out of place. Her dress was clean but modest, her shoes worn from years of walking, not posing. Before she even reached the front desk, whispers spread like wildfire. Is she lost? Someone escort the janitorial staff back downstairs. No, wait, this is going to be good. Laughter rippled through the sleek marble lobby. Behind the reception desk, a young assistant covered her mouth, pretending to cough. It wasn't just condescension, it was orchestrated like a ritual, like a warning. This world isn't for you. But the woman didn't flinch, her posture straight, her gaze steady. She clutched a weathered leather folder, no designer bag, no resume, printed on platinum cardstock. And that only made it worse. You're here for the interview. The HR director's voice was a blade laced with syrup. Darling, this company handles billion-dollar portfolios, not bake sales. A nearby intern whispered, I'm live, watch this. She's about to cry, but she didn't. She just looked at the company's logo on the marble wall, and for a brief moment, smiled. The receptionist didn't need to say much. Her silence, her smile. The slow swipe of her manicured nails on the desks spoke louder. The interview rooms are that way, she said, finally nodding toward a glass hallway guarded by a biometric scanner. But they're for candidates who pass the screening. She didn't wink. She didn't have to. Everyone nearby caught the message. The woman in the plain dress still hadn't spoken. She simply took one step forward, then another. The air in the lobby, already cool, turned glacial. This wasn't just an office, it was a fortress. The kind built with clean lines, sharp glass, and sharper social divisions. The marble beneath her shoes wasn't just stone. It was a mirror of exclusion, polished by generations of those who belonged. And on that marble she stood out like a stain. People stared, some subtly, others openly. One intern whispered into their phone, still live. She's walking toward the scanner, like she thinks she has access. This is gold. The walls around her carried the history of old money, silent portraits of past CEOs, gold-lettered mission statements framed under spotlights, and that ever-present sense of exclusivity, citrus leather ambition. At the far end of the lobby, the doors to the executive wing opened. A woman emerged, striking in a tailored crimson pantsuit that cost more than a semester at NYU. She didn't glance as if she assessed, did someone leave the service entrance open? She asked loud enough for the echo to carry. This isn't the soup kitchen, sweetheart. Laughter, harsher, now bounced off the high ceilings. A group of junior analysts near the coffee bar chuckled. One even mimed handing her a tray. The woman paused, just once, then continued walking like none of it had reached her. She stopped beneath the main chandelier, an enormous custom-made cascade of crystal that bathed the lobby in fractured light. Its reflection broke across her face, slicing her features like a prism. She looked up, not in awe, but calculation. Then down again, her hand gently laid a worn leather-bound folder on the front desk. The action was quiet, unremarkable, but something shifted. A flicker in the air, a glitch in the mood. The receptionist's smirk faltered just a second. The intern's voice lowered. The woman in red blinked. I'm sorry, the receptionist said suddenly. Do you have an appointment? The woman didn't answer. She simply turned her eyes to the glass corridor and walked toward the scanner. There's no way she gets through, the intern whispered. She's bluffing, but she wasn't bluffing. She wasn't rushing. She moved like someone who wasn't allowed in, but had simply come home. And just as she passed beneath the company's gold-etched motto, "We rise above," she stopped for one heartbeat, then spoke calm but clear. Let's see how high you're still standing. When today ends, she pressed her palm gently against the scanner. The machine beeped, the doors clicked and opened. The doors slid open with a soft click. Behind them, a narrow corridor stretched into the executive wing, frosted glass security cameras, and silence. But as the woman stepped through, that silence cracked like glass, because waiting at the far end was a panel of interviewers, 5 of them impeccably dressed, intimidating by design. And seated at the center, Veronica Lang, Senior VP of Acquisitions, known in the industry as the Iron Smile. She was mid-sentence when she looked up, her gaze sharpened. Excuse me, she said coolly, adjusting her Hermes scarf. We're in the middle of a scheduled interview block. Who let her in? The panel turned. A long silence fell. The woman didn't flinch. She stepped to the front of the room and stood. Veronica's voice grew louder, slicing through the air like a scalpel. What position did you apply for? Facilities guest services. She bypassed security. One of the assistants exclaimed. She used the executive scanner. That's a breach. Phones came out. Someone pressed record. This is unbelievable, said another panelist, laughing. Do you even know where you are? Maybe she thinks this is the lobby of a hospital. Someone sneered. Still, the woman said nothing. She simply placed her folder on the long obsidian table. The weight of it made a soft thud, like a judge's gavel. She opened it slowly, revealing a set of documents clipped precisely. Ma'am, a security officer had arrived. You're going to need to leave. Veronica stood. Enough, I don't care how she got in. This is a professional space, she's trespassing, escort her out. The woman finally looked at her. Not with anger, not even with defiance. Just calm. She reached into the folder and pulled out a letter. One bearing the company's gold insignia, signed. She laid it gently on the table and pushed it forward with 2 fingers. The panel glanced down, then froze. Veronica frowned, picked up the paper, read the signature, and turned pale. No, she whispered. This can't be real. But the letter was very real. It was the board's internal memo announcing the immediate appointment of a new chairwoman of strategic direction. Effective today. Her name was right there, Evelyn Hale, the woman in the plain dress. The one they just humiliated on camera. Oh my God, someone gasped. She's the owner. No worse, someone muttered. She's the board. Phones were still recording. Evelyn didn't say a word. She simply closed her folder, took a step back, and turned to leave. Calm, deliberate, but not before pausing at the door. Next time, she said, without raising her voice, make sure the people you try to shame don't already own the building. And then she was gone. The room didn't breathe, not when Veronica dropped the letter, not when Evelyn simply stood there, hands by her sides, a quietness around her that suddenly felt suffocating. The intern's phone was still recording. The view count ticked past 100,000. Is this real? Someone whispered again. She's not just new, she's in charge. Veronica finally broke the silence. This must be some kind of stunt, she said, her voice thin, brittle. This letter could be fake, anyone can forge a header. But even she didn't believe it. Not really. The weight of Evelyn's presence said more than any signature could. Then the heavy double doors opened again. All eyes turned. A tall, broad-shouldered man, in his late 50s, walked in charcoal gray suit. No tie. Wexford gold pin on the lapel. Calm, but commanding apologies for the delay. He said, walking toward Evelyn without acknowledging anyone else. Chairwoman, Hale prefers to observe before being introduced. Gasps. The man was Robert Kincaid, CEO's senior counsel, the one who only showed up when things got serious. He turned toward the board panel, his tone unchanged. What transpired in this room over the past 15 minutes is now part of the official record, including the unauthorized live stream, the verbal misconduct, and the attempted removal of a board executive. The intern's hand began to tremble. He ended the live stream. Wait, what? Veronica stood, her voice rising. She walked in unannounced. We didn't know who she was. Robert turned his gaze to her, calm but lethal. Then perhaps you should have asked before insulting her family, her attire and her intelligence. Evelyn Hale is not only chairwoman of strategic direction, she is the lead negotiator behind the silent acquisition of this firm's parent holdings. Someone gasped aloud. You mean? She engineered the takeover. Robert gave a small nod. Under the pseudonym E.H. Advisors, the board approved it last quarter. None of you bothered to ask who the was. Veronica sank into her chair. Her lips trembled. She wasn't used to being outplayed, especially not by someone silent. Evelyn finally stepped forward. She looked directly at the intern. What's your name? She asked softly. Ben, he stammered. Ben, she repeated. Keep that footage, you'll need it when HR calls you. He swallowed, nodded. Then looked almost grateful. Evelyn turned back to the room. I didn't come here today for applause. But if the first test of leadership is how you treat someone who seems lesser, then this company failed before I even arrived. Robert motioned toward the hallway. Your boardroom is ready, Chairwoman. She nodded but paused at the doorway. One last glance at Veronica. By the way, I do enjoy red, but on you. It screams desperation. And with that, Evelyn walked out, head held high, as the room sat frozen in disbelief. The door closed behind her with a quiet click. In the silence that followed, a senior VP whispered to Veronica, "She didn't just win today. She's been 5 steps ahead this whole time." Veronica didn't respond. She finally realized the woman they mocked wasn't climbing the ladder. She owned it. The boardroom was silent. The polished table reflected Evelyn's calm expression as she sat at the head. For the first time, not like a conqueror, but like someone returning home. Robert remained standing behind her, a subtle signal to everyone that she wasn't alone. Not now. Not ever. She scanned the room, familiar faces, some pale, some smugly unreadable. Then the side door creaked open. A woman entered mid-40s, conservative attire, hair in a low bun. She carried no designer bag, only a slim laptop, and a quiet confidence that didn't need to prove itself. "Chairwoman Hale," she said with a small nod. "Apologies for being late." HR files were heavier than expected. Evelyn smiled genuinely this time. "No apologies needed." Margaret whispers stirred Margaret Linwood. "I thought she resigned last year. Didn't Veronica push her out?" Veronica flinched indeed. Margaret had once been director of internal ops until she was demoted, quietly edged out for underperformance. A cover story. Of course she had warned the board about risky overseas dealings, which later lost them millions. But now she was back, standing taller than ever. "Margaret has agreed to return," Evelyn said, calmly as executive director of ethics and oversight. A beat of silence, effective immediately. Another beat. Then, "That's not protocol." One board member protested. "These roles require nomination and a review process." Evelyn met his eyes. "Correct, and as majority shareholder, I've already signed off. You're welcome to review it." After this meeting, Robert placed the documents in front of the protester without a word. The man glanced, then looked away. Margaret moved behind Evelyn, taking a seat beside Robert. It was symbolic, a triangle of calm surrounded by a room of people unraveling. Evelyn continued, "This company has prized performance and prestige above integrity for too long. It's time we recalibrated." She glanced briefly at Veronica, who could no longer mask the trembling in her hands. Margaret was discarded because she asked hard questions. Today we make sure those questions are the first we ask. It was Margaret who first sent Evelyn the leaked internal reports that triggered her interest in Wexford. She wasn't just an ally, she was the catalyst. Margaret gave a small nod as if acknowledging a pact that needed no words. Evelyn stood. "Let's begin. Some changes are overdue." As she opened her folder and the room braced itself, Robert leaned toward Margaret and whispered, "It begins." And it did. The air in the boardroom thickened. Evelyn stood at the head of the table, flipping open her folder. Her movements were unhurried, controlled. Across from her, executives shifted in their seats. Nobody looked her in the eye now. She didn't need a gavel. Her silence was the sentence. "Let's begin with conduct reviews," she said, her voice steady. "Effective today, all department heads will undergo a comprehensive audit, financial, ethical, and managerial." Several heads turned sharply. "That's highly unusual?" One VP said, "Not anymore," Evelyn replied. Robert slid a document across the table, a list of names. The first one, Veronica Lang. She stiffened. "That can't be right. I have performance records." Evelyn interrupted gently. "Yes, we've reviewed them, alongside complaints buried by your department. 12 to be exact." Gasps. Margaret, sitting beside Robert, opened a thin folder and began distributing sealed envelopes. "Suspensions are effective immediately," she announced, "pending final review." Veronica's hand trembled as she took the envelope. She didn't open it. She didn't have to. "You'll have a chance to respond," Evelyn said, still calm, with counsel. Then she moved down the list. Next, Caleb Finn, head of external strategy. "Do you recall a hiring decision made in Q2, an intern dismissed after raising a data manipulations concern?" Caleb's face went pale. "I thought that case was closed." "It is now," Evelyn said, reopened. And under investigation, another envelope, another silence. The third, Maya Robbins, communications director. "You authorized an internal memo mocking our competitor's bankruptcy. The phrasing was, Evelyn opened a page. Quote, "Let them burn." Maya swallowed hard. It was a joke, internal morale. It's now public. Someone leaked it this morning. Maya's envelope hit the table like a stone. Each name, each moment, a precise incision. Not revenge, just reckoning. The room began to fold inward. Even those not named sat straighter, breathed shallower. Still, Evelyn didn't rush. She paused between each decision, gave space, let silence do the work. By the time the last envelope was delivered, the table looked like a battlefield. Papers unopened, hands clenched, reputations hanging by threads. "None of these actions are personal," she said finally. "They're overdue." Each of the first 3 people suspended were among those who laughed during her entrance. There was no memo about that, but she remembered. Before closing the folder, she turned to Robert. "Notify? Legal? Prepare an internal statement for shareholders." Then to Margaret. "Set interviews for department realignment. I want new leadership in place by next quarter." She looked around the room. No anger, no triumph, just stillness. "If you're still in this room," she said, "you have a choice. Be better or step aside." The message was clear. Just then a phone buzzed, then another heads turned. A headline had broken. "Mysterious takeover at Wexford. New chairwoman shakes the room." The story was live. The reckoning had left the boardroom and gone public. By noon, the boardroom storm had reached the world. News tickers ran the headline across every major outlet: Wexford Capital, overhauled by silent chairwoman. Evelyn Hale takes control. The article beneath it was filled with details no one inside that room had shared. Footage from the intern's live stream, snippets of the memo, names, faces. They weren't anonymous anymore. By mid-afternoon, hashtags were trending. The chairwoman. She didn't raise. Or her voice. Corporate karma. The internet had found its next icon. But Evelyn didn't tweet, didn't speak to press, didn't make a statement. She just kept working. "Are you not going to respond?" Margaret asked gently, scrolling through her phone. "People are calling you a queen." Evelyn looked up from a document. "They called me invisible 3 years ago. Same press. Same public." She wasn't being bitter, just clear-eyed. The truth was, Evelyn had once been part of the media machine, once profiled as finance's rising star. But after her husband's scandal, one she had no part in, she disappeared. Her silence had been read as guilt. Now her silence was being read as power. "They don't know your story," Margaret said. "They don't need to," Evelyn replied. "They're watching the right one now." Meanwhile, back at the Wexford building, former executives tried to spin their narratives. Veronica issued a brief internal email calling the situation unfortunate and misleading. Maya posted on LinkedIn, "Leadership is a journey. We all make mistakes." But the internet was relentless. Clips of Veronica's voice mocking. Evelyn had surfaced. Not official recordings, just audio caught on a personal phone. The laugh, the tone, the words, soup, kitchen, chic. The video looped. "Not here for bake sales." Darling public sentiment turned icy. She mocked a woman she thought was beneath her. Now she's the one out in the cold. For every one post, trying to defend the old guard, 10 flooded in, celebrating Evelyn. But Evelyn didn't smile. She didn't post a selfie. She simply walked into her next meeting, and the one after that. When a reporter managed to catch her leaving the building that evening, microphone in hand, he called out Ms. Hale. "Do you have anything to say to the public?" She paused, turned, then simply said, "Watch what we build next," and left. That simple clip, just 8 words, went viral again. Within 12 hours, it became a slogan. Watch what she builds next, printed on t-shirts, mugs, banners at women's conferences. But Evelyn ignored it all. She didn't need the noise, she only needed the work. By the end of the week, the firestorm had cooled, but its impact hadn't. Wexford was still buzzing. New leadership teams were being assembled. HR was flooded with applications. And in the middle of it all, Evelyn was packing her things. Just a single box, no plaques, no trophies, just documents, a notebook, and a photo of her mother, young in front of a sewing machine, smiling. "You're really leaving?" Margaret stood in the doorway. Evelyn nodded. She looked rested. Not because she had slept, but because something inside her had finally unclenched. "I was never here to stay," she said. "Only to set the bones straight." Margaret stepped closer. uneasy. But the shareholders, the press, they want you here. They don't need me. They need what we built. Robert joined them quietly, holding a sealed envelope. Final vote from the board, he said. Unanimous. They've ratified Margaret as president of ethics and operations. Evelyn smiled. Then it's working. She placed her badge on the desk. No ceremony, no goodbye speech, just presence and then absence. As she walked through the hallways for the last time, heads turned not out of fear, not anymore, but out of respect. Not a whisper, not a laugh, only nods, small, silent acknowledgments. In the lobby, Ben the intern waited by the door. He handed her a coffee, plain just how she liked it. They framed a still from the live stream. He said, "It's hanging outside the elevator now." Which part? Evelyn asked. The smile. Right before the scanner turned green, she shook her head, amused. That wasn't a smile, she said. That was a memory. Then she stepped out. No limo, no flash bulbs, just the city and the woman who never needed noise to change things. A week later, a quiet filing appeared in the state registry. A small investment firm, once flailing, had a new name on the board. E. Hale. It was the same firm whose CEO had laughed her out of an interview 2 years ago. She wasn't walking away. She was walking forward. They called it silence. But for Evelyn, it was survival. Long before she stepped into Wexford's boardroom, she had learned that not every battle needed noise. Sometimes power lived in restraint. When her husband's scandal broke years ago, the media feasted. They wanted quotes, emotion, outrage. She gave them none. Instead, she watched everything burn and learned. She learned how the world reacts to anger from a woman, how quickly grief is mistaken for guilt, how often silence is interpreted as weakness, until it's not. You never defended yourself, Margaret once said. Not even when they tried to ruin you, I didn't need to. Evelyn had replied, I wasn't theirs to understand. Her silence wasn't absence, it was strategy. Each quiet step she took, every firm she studied, every investment she made was deliberate. She wasn't hiding, she was preparing. And when the time came, she didn't need applause, she just needed precision. The world now praised her composure, but Evelyn knew the same world had once mocked it. Still she held no resentment, only clarity. The viral clip that inspired millions. Watch what we build next wasn't a performance. It was something her mother used to say when life broke around them. We don't fight to win, her mother once told her. We rebuild to last. And that was her answer. Not revenge, but renewal. Evelyn never asked for power. She earned it quietly, piece by piece. Not by shouting louder, but by standing firmer. Not by revenge, but by rebuilding. Her story isn't about noise. It's about knowing who you are when the world forgets. Because sometimes dignity isn't dramatic. Sometimes it just walks into the room and doesn't need to say a word. And maybe that's what they'll remember most about her. She didn't need the last word. She became it. If this story moved you, challenged you, or reminded you of someone strong in your life, share it in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you believe more people need to see stories like this, give it a like, subscribe, and send it to someone who needs to be reminded. Silence is never weakness. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Trust us, your next favorite story is just one click away.